Every time I kiss someone, I see how their last relationship ended. This time I witnessed more than I bargained for. It all started with Johnny Wellington. We were in middle school. I'd worn a white sundress that day and my hair was tied up in a ponytail. Johnny kissed me on the playground, his lips barely gracing mine for a moment before he ran off with his friends as they all giggled and poked fun at him. That was my first kiss, and the first time I came to the realization that I was different. The only way I can think to describe it is by saying that the second his lips touched mine, it was almost like they were telling me a silent story, a warning camouflaged in the form of affection. It was only a flash, but I could clearly see why his last relationship ended with Shelley Frankenworth. She had caught him talking about her in the library. "So did you kiss her yet?" Jonah asked, leaning against the teen fiction books, his arms crossed over his chest. "Yeah, and I wish I hadn't," Johnny said, shoving his finger down his throat in a barfing motion. "I don't know what she had for lunch, but she tasted like tuna salad." On the other side of the bookshelves, Shelley heard him, her hand freezing midair. The book she was holding toppled to the ground, A Series of Unfortunate Events by Lemony Snicket. Ironically, that was a very unfortunate event. She broke up with him the next day and told all the other girls that he had cooties. Cooties were the least of my worries, though. These visions were 10 times worse. I couldn't kiss anyone without being instantly disgusted with them. I never felt the usual fireworks that everyone else did because my mind was always reminding me why I shouldn't date them. My next kiss was in one of the back corner booths at Chili's. I know, real romantic. Something about their bottomless wings just really sets the mood, you know? I was 15 and he was 16. I remember being a bit tense all throughout the date, knowing that he would probably make a move. We had been on 3 dates now, and although I was still a little unsure about him, I did like him. That was until I kissed him. His lips on mine was what sealed the deal. "Peter, I just can't do this." Blonde curls hung limply over her shoulders, her blue eyes watery and her nose red. A bit of snot coated her upper lip. She had been crying all night. Mascara ran down her cheeks in thin black trails. This poor girl looked like she had been through the ringer. "Come on, Grace, it was an accident." He paced back and forth, his hands carding through strands of auburn hair. "It didn't even mean anything." Grace's arms shook as she crossed them. I could tell that she still loved him, but she wanted to hold her ground. At this point, it looked like a losing battle, her lip trembling and her mind wavering, her sanity hanging on by a thread. But it still happened. She blew out a shaky breath. It still happened, and nothing you do or say will change that. He had cheated on her. The second I pulled back from that kiss, my eyes searched his for a moment, hoping that I would still see the boy from before. But all of that had been tainted, ruined in a matter of seconds. I threw my napkin on the table and dashed out of the restaurant, leaving him to pay the bill. It's the least he could do. He deserved whatever karma he had coming for him. I didn't kiss anyone else until I was 23. Something about those numbers catapulted my biological time clock into action. And I was certain that if I just went on enough dates, I'd find one guy that hadn't screwed up terribly enough for me to stick around. I went on 15 dates before I struck gold. Or at least that's what I thought. Spencer Lancaster was everything that I wasn't, and that's what initially attracted me to him. He was outgoing, charming, and could work any room that he walked into. He could strike up a conversation with a complete stranger and make it seem like the most natural thing in the world. So when he reached out to me and asked to go on a date, I jumped at the idea. The date went well, but they always went well, up until they kissed me. We talked about something funny that had happened to him at the grocery store the other day and laughed about his horrible stash of pickup lines. By the time we had finished our dessert, it was so late that the restaurant practically kicked us out. We shot each other a look as we strolled down the sidewalk before both of us burst into laughter. "Did you notice the way that lady kept circling our table?" Spencer asked, a lopsided grin spilling out onto his features. "Oh, you mean when she practically stared holes into the back of our heads?" Another giggle bubbled up from my lips. "Pretty sure she wanted us gone like 30 minutes ago." Don't worry about it. I left her a good tip." His shoulder brushed against mine for a second, playfully nudging me. "Handsome and generous," I murmured teasingly. I usually wasn't this open and lighthearted because I knew what the outcome would probably be. But something about Spencer was just so easy. Liking him was effortless. "You give me more credit than I deserve." His lips tugged up again, perfectly white teeth flashing me a Hollywood smile as his arm came up to rest around my shoulders, pulling me close. For just a moment, I allowed myself to let my walls down. I leaned into the warmth of his embrace, and for a second, I threw caution to the wind. As we walked around the square, continuing our playful banter, it didn't take us long to notice that all the other shops around us were closing. So Spencer proposed an idea. "Hey," he said, scratching the back of his neck before shuffling in place a bit. This was the first time I'd seen him even remotely nervous. "I don't mean for this to sound forward, but is there any chance you might want to come back to my apartment for a bit?" I still don't know if it was the 3 glasses of wine or the way that he was able to put my mind at ease, but I found myself shaking my head yes before my brain could even register what I was doing. In fact, all logic had flown out the window. Spencer's apartment was nice and quaint and unusually immaculate. In fact, it smelled like he had scrubbed the place down top to bottom with bleach. Now I know what you're thinking. That should have been your first red flag. Listen, I know I was stupid and slightly tipsy, and hindsight is 20/20. I couldn't help the way that my nose twisted up when I walked in though, and Spencer was quick to catch on. "Hey, yeah, I apologize for the smell." His hand once again came up to awkwardly rub the back of his neck. I was in a rush to get a stain out of one of my white dress shirts and spilled almost a whole bottle of bleach in the process. An awkward laugh left his lips. as something akin to embarrassment burned at his cheeks. "Let me just pop open a window real quick." He dropped his keys in the bowl beside the door. "In the meantime, you can just make yourself at home." I kicked off my heels at the door, treading across the hardwood and plopping down onto one of his couches. Both of them were a light shade of gray. In fact, gray was a recurring color scheme in his apartment, except for the occasional pop of navy. As I waited, I couldn't help but glance around his apartment. Instead of pictures or knickknacks, I was met with strange, abstract pieces of art. One of them was a vase shaped like a hand. He didn't strike me as the type of man to enjoy the fine arts, but then again, who was I to judge? When he finally strolled back into the room, he nodded towards the fridge and said, "You want some water?" "No, I'm good. Thank you, though." My fingers came up to tuck a stray strand of hair behind my ear. The open windows were making the apartment a little drafty. As he cracked open the fridge, I shifted uncomfortably in my seat. Something was poking me, and it felt sort of sharp. I reached up under me, digging around until I found the culprit. A shiny gold hair clip stared up at me before it was quickly snatched from my grasp. "Oh, sorry about that," Spencer laughed, tossing it into the little hand-shaped vase. "My sister stayed here for about a week and I'm still finding stuff that she's left behind." Insert red flag number 2. "Don't worry about it." I patted the seat next to me and smiled. "Is she younger or older?" The rest of the night was spent talking about our family issues and sharing another bottle of wine. Ironically, not only were Spencer and I the oldest siblings, but both of our mothers believed in the power of the essential oil propaganda. I jokingly told him that bleach would give him cancer, the smell still assaulting my nose from time to time, and he was quick to reply back with, "Well, next time I'll just douse my shirts in."